Welcome to Apple Month, and this is our second apple recipe for the month. And today we are making single serve apple galette, or apple galette for one. Now you may ask, what is a galette? Galette is actually French in origin, and it is a rustic free-form pie. There is no crimping, no trimming, no pie dish involved. You basically just take your pie crust, put your filling in, and fold your pie crust up over the filling. Now, galettes can be sweet or savory. I have done another video that has a berry galette in it if you want to check that one out. But today we're using apples. All right, so for our recipe today, we are using a Granny Smith apple. I like to use a tart apple in my apple desserts because I find that helps to offset the sweetness of the sugar that we're gonna add in. But you could also use a Honeycrisp or just use whatever apple you have. But today we're using a Granny Smith. But before we deal with the apple, we are gonna make our pie crust or our galette crust. And for that, I have got a 1/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon of all-purpose flour in my bowl. We're gonna add in just a pinch of salt. We're gonna use a teaspoon of sugar. And then we're going to use 2 tablespoons of cold butter. And I've taken that cold butter and I've just diced it up. We're just gonna add that butter in. And then you could use a fork. I'm gonna use a pastry blender. And we wanna combine that butter in with the flour mixture until it resembles just coarse sand. All right, after we have that looking like coarse sand, we're gonna take some cold water. And I've just added a few ice cubes in with my water because I want it nice and cold. And I'm gonna add in 2 teaspoons. The amount of water you're gonna use is gonna depend on a lot of things, the temperature in your house, your weather. It's kind of dry here in Utah, so I'm sure I'm gonna probably end up using more than 2. I forgot a fork. All right, just take your fork and you wanna just then start to combine that until all the dry ingredients comes together. Now you don't want this wet, you want it just damp so that we get a nice soft pie dough or galette dough. Yeah, I'm gonna need another teaspoon here. All right. And then you can kind of use your fingers, see if it'll bring it together. Just kind of pinch it all in there. And if it's still too dry and all that flour is not combining, just add just a couple drops more. And if you get it too wet, you can add in a little bit more flour. Now, depending on the temperature in your room, your hands, the butter that you use, you may need to chill your dough for 10-15 minutes if it is too soft to work with. I think mine's okay and I'm a little impatient, so I'm not gonna chill mine. We're just gonna go ahead and roll it out. All right, I am gonna bake my galette on just my little small baking sheet. So I have got some parchment paper here. If all you have is a bigger baking sheet, use it. But I'm gonna take 2 pieces of parchment paper, put one down here, and then I'm gonna put my pie dough on top of it. I wanna grab a little bit of flour. Okay, and we're just going to sprinkle a little flour on here so that our dough doesn't stick to it. And then I'm gonna take my other piece of parchment, lay it on top, and then just take my hand and kind of smush down on my dough so that it forms a disc. Just like that, all right? And then just a little bit of flour on top of it. It's gonna make it easier to roll out. Then we're gonna take a rolling pin and we're gonna roll across it. Now, how I like to roll my dough to try to get it as circular as possible is I roll one way, then I rotate 45 degrees. I roll it again, rotate, and that's how I just keep rolling and rotating. And I'm not gonna get a perfect circle, but that's okay because this is a rustic pie, remember? And you wanna roll your dough out until it's about 1/8 of an inch. We're gonna peel off, gently peel off our top layer of parchment paper. There we go. You can see our nice free-form pie crust here. We're gonna take our baking sheet and just lay that right on our baking sheet. And then go ahead and just kind of loosen up the edges. If they're sticking a little bit, just take a little flour, because this is what we're gonna fold up over the top of our pie crust. There we go. All right, so before we add the apples, we're gonna add up the little mixture that's gonna go on top of the apples. And we're gonna use 1 to 2 tablespoons of sugar. It just depends on how sweet your apples already are, how sweet you like your apples. I'm gonna go with 1.5. And then we're going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of cornstarch. This is just gonna help act as a thickener for all those juices that the apples are gonna give off. It'll thicken them up a bit. And then we're gonna use a 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon and just a pinch of nutmeg. If you don't have nutmeg, totally okay. Go ahead and mix that up. All right, and then we're gonna take our pie crust. We've got our apples, and we're gonna just pile them right in the middle of the pie crust. You wanna leave about an inch, 1.5 border around the apples. And now we're gonna take the little mixture we made, make sure it's nice and combined, and we're gonna sprinkle that over the top of the apples. You can kind of move a few of the apples aside to get it all the way in there. All right. And then we're gonna take some butter. I've just got some softened butter here, about 1 tablespoon of softened butter, and I'm just gonna take it in little pieces and place it on top of the apples. And this is actually 1/2 tablespoon, not a tablespoon. And then we're just gonna take that edge of the pie crust and fold it up over the apples. Now the apples will be left exposed in the middle. You kind of can take little tucks or pleats in the dough as you fold it up. The thing that's important is just try to avoid any holes in your pie crust, because that's a place where all those juices can escape. Now, some are gonna get out probably, that's gonna bubble a little out, which is totally fine. But just try to make sure, as best as you can, that your pie crust doesn't have any holes in it. Then it is ready to go in the oven. Now, if you're feeling fancy, which I'm not today, you can take an egg wash and brush just the pastry crust with some egg wash or some whipping cream, sprinkle it with some additional sugar, and makes it a little prettier, a little bit more golden brown, but it's purely just aesthetic. Today, we're gonna put it in just as it is, 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for 20 minutes, or until the apples are nice and cooked through and bubbly and the crust is golden brown. All right, our apple galette is out. You can see I had a little tiny bit of juices that seeped out, but totally fine. And so we are just gonna take it, my favorite way to serve it. So we're gonna place it on a plate. Of course, you could eat it right off the pan too. And then it's gotta have some ice cream, vanilla ice cream. And then we're gonna use some of that amazing caramel sauce we made. You can find the recipe right up there. Whoa, so delicious. There you have it, the perfect fall dessert, an apple galette with a flaky pie crust, a yummy apple cinnamon filling topped with ice cream and caramel sauce. Gotta try it. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen, and we'll see you in the next video.